Hey gang, I'm Dr. Who. This is Accounting is a Joke, where accounting makes sense so you can make dollars. Today we're going to take a look at an illustration of a walkthrough problem that allows us to calculate the unknowns by using the accounting equation. If you're uncertain about the accounting equation, I've already dropped a link to a video that could get you up to speed in no time. So without any further ado, let's rock and roll, gang. So it tells us Roland's Overhead Doors reports the following financial information. Click on the icon to see the information. Alright, so it tells us that we have some account titles with some values. We have assets, liabilities, common stock of an amount, dividends, revenues actually, but they didn't give us the amount for the expenses. So, looks like we have to back into the expenses. So let's see what they're talking about. Use the accounting equation to solve for the missing information. Okay. Did Roland Overhead Doors report net income or net loss? All right, so let's see what we have here. Okay, so obviously we have to put in some accounts based on the accounting equation. And what it seems to be is that we're going to solve expenses. So since we're missing expenses, gang, and we know the accounting equation in its truest form is basically assets equals liabilities plus stockholders' equity, the best way to approach the solve for the unknown, which are expenses, is to further break down that equation. We know from step one that assets equals liabilities plus stockholders' equity. But we know that stockholders' equity is broken down into two parts. First part is called paid in capital, which is simply your common stock account. And the second part is called retained earnings, which is an account itself that we describe as the income that the company retains to help operate and grow the business. Now, whenever the company decides to distribute income to the shareholders, we call that account dividends. And we already know, gang, that dividends reduces the amount of our retained earnings balance. So in all actuality, our accounting equation should equal assets equals liabilities plus common stock plus retained earnings, which happens to be the combination of income, which consists of revenue accounts minus expense accounts minus dividend accounts. So I'm willing to bet that's exactly how we're going to attack this problem to back into the expenses. So we know that our assets is always on the left hand side, so that's easy. And let's see what we have. We have a missing account or missing amount that needs to be added, so I would assume that that's the liabilities, right? And so we know that our stockholders' equity is broken down into two parts, and the first part happens to be common stock. So we're going to go ahead and put the common stock, and it's being subtracted. So what are we going to subtract? So we know that retained earnings is added, so they're asking to subtract something. Let's see what we have here. Okay, dividends. We're going to subtract the dividends, and then what will we add? Well, we said that retained earnings is consisted of income, which is revenues minus expenses, and we said that retained earnings is decreased by the dividends account, which we already accounted for here. So it seems as though the only other accounts that we have to describe in this equation would be our revenues minus our expenses. So now all we have to do, gang, is use this table to plug in the answers, and hopefully we'll get it right. So we have 54,800. Our liabilities are 17,220. The common stock is 27,460. Our dividends 6,500. Revenues happens to be 8,850, and we don't know what our expenses are. So we have to calculate the expenses. So if this holds true to the accounting equation, we could simply find our expenses by transposing it to the left side, since it's being subtracted, and transpose assets to the right side. So we would subtract assets, right? So if we get our trusted calculator, basically we would take our liabilities, which is 17,220. We're gonna add our common stock, which is 27,460. We're gonna subtract our dividends, which is 6,500. We're gonna add our revenues, which is 8850, and we're gonna subtract, by transposing our assets to the other side, 45,800. And so that gives us an amount of $1,230. That will be our expenses gain, $1,230. And that should be it. So let's check the answer. Bags all day. Nice work. Let's move on to the second requirement. Requirement number 2. Did Roland's overhead doors report net income or net loss? Okay. So we already know that retained earnings is income gain. And anytime that you have income, we measure income by taking our revenues and subtracting our expenses. If our revenues are higher than our expenses, we call that a net income. But if our expenses exceed our revenues, we call that a net loss. So obviously we have revenues of $88.50 and they're exceeding our expenses, so we know that it's a net income. All right, so if we take $88.50 and subtract 1,230, that will tell us exactly how much the net income is. So we have a net income of $76.20, $7,620. Check the answer, money all day. So that wraps up, gang, how to properly calculate the unknown by using the accounting equation. Stick to the script and always remember that at any given time, your company's assets will equal the liabilities plus stockholders' equity. But if there's an unknown, you can always transpose the missing amounts if you truly know your accounting equation. With that being said, that wraps up this quick walkthrough. And if that light bulb is clicking upstairs, or if you learned something, please like, subscribe, and share the channel with your friends so they can help chase the bags as well. As always, I'm Dr. Who, and I'll see you soon.